All right. Okay, all right. Brian Laundrie and his parents. I'm going to analyze them, but with the caveat that I've not met Brian Laundrie, I've not met his parents, I've also not met his sister, and neither has anybody else. I want to acknowledge that this is just me reacting to what I have seen, and it is clearly an incomplete picture. But given the data that I have two kind of big thoughts. The first is it bad that Brian Laundrie's parents are protecting him? I do. At this point, I think it's pretty clear that they have protected him. They have spent time with him, and they've not helped the police. When I first hear that, I go, what horrible people. And then if I think about if it was my son, could I be convinced that he didn't do it? Could I be convinced that it was a mistake? Could I be convinced that it was in my family's best interest to protect my child? And I think the answer is yes. And I think for most people, the answer is yes. So on the front of, are they bad people or are they wrong for protecting their kid? I'm not sure that they are. Now, what I will be judgmental about is Brian Laundrie's behavior, making the assumption that he killed Gabby. If he engaged in that behavior, I do feel judgmental about the parents. I really believe fundamentally that dysfunctional, horrific, super distorted behavior comes from something. And everybody will point to, Jeffrey Dahmer or this serial killer, they were had a totally healthy childhood. I don't believe it. I just simply don't believe it. Abnormal behavior comes from an abnormal environment at some level. Here's the thing. I think that there's a reason why culturally we push back on pointing out that sort of obvious fact. I think it feels really uncomfortable for people to think that if they were abused, they are in some way more likely to be abusive. And I think it's important to note that they're not. Oftentimes, people that are abused are even more protective of their family, right? They've seen the horror of the abuse and they do the opposite. But everybody that abuses has been at some level mistreated. So if you look at Brian's behavior, it's probably likely that something negative happened, either physical abuse, physical, sexual, some kind of abuse like that, or some kind of significant neglect. And I will step out on a limb here and guess that in the case like this, it would have been neglect. And I have a few reasons for that. The first is, if you notice in the body cam footage, the one type of abuse that Gabby points to pretty clearly is that Brian, when they were in their conflict, Brian kicked her out of the van, locked the doors of the van, and tried to keep her away. And essentially saying, when you're misbehaving, you get away from me, right? Sort of gives her the stiff arm and says, go isolate, right? Feels a lot like neglect. I wonder if he's duplicating the treatment he received when he was a kid, when he was acting out. The second thing is, in that body cam footage, Gabby asked for a bottle of water. They go give her the bottle of water. They also offer a bottle of water to Brian. And Brian's response to that is, no, I don't drink out of plastic bottles. It's a pretty extreme stance. If you have that kind of strong belief in recycling, in nature, etc., you all of a sudden have a family. You have people that are like-minded. And I wonder if growing up, he never felt like he aligned with people, if he felt sort of untethered. And then as his life has evolved, he's found this sort of environmentalist niche that he can fall into and have a true identity. And then the last thing is, during the whole interaction with the police, Brian was pretty good at creating a connection with the police, joking with the police, seeking attention. And if you think about a kid growing up that was neglected, that child has to learn in bad situations, how do I get the attention I need? How do I change my behavior? How do I manipulate and maneuver with these people to get the support that I want? And he did that very well as an adult when those cops pulled him over. So those three things together, to me, feel more like the result of neglect than abuse. So if there was some kind of mistreatment in his childhood, that would be my guess. But please, in the comments below, let me know what you think. Hit the like button, or you can even hit the unlike button. Just get a conversation going. And you should, for sure, if you haven't already, you should subscribe. Thanks for listening.